Okay, whatever reviewer said that this movie is the worst Texas Chainsaw Massacre film so far, you clearly have not watched about half of this franchise. So Leatherface tells the story of young Jedediah Sawyer who gets yanked from his family by an angry, vengeful Texan sheriff, put into a mental hospital for 10 years, and then one night, young Jedediah, under a new name, and 4 other inmates escape from this asylum, and as they leave a trail of blood and tears behind them, you as the audience member are left to wonder which one of these characters becomes the titular Leatherface. Alright people, as you know, I've been going over the entire Texas Chainsaw franchise leading up to October when I expected Leatherface to be dropped. Well, Christmas came early because it's already here, so fuck it. We're going to talk about it right in the middle of my review series. Let's talk some Leatherface. So this movie has been talked about for a while. It's been in development, it's been looking for distribution, it's been in the conversation in the horror community for quite a while. A lot of people are really looking forward to it. A lot of people thinking this is going to be another shit bomb, but nonetheless, the movie is here, and this is supposed to be a prelude and a prequel to the original Tobe Hooper Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now let me start by saying that I have had zero faith in this movie. Not only did the entire production of this thing and the distribution rights and all the back and forth and pushing back and changing release dates just come up as a gigantic red flag that this thing was probably going to suck, but I'm just burnt out and sick of Hollywood's obsession of going back to the beginning. Let's go back and tell all the stories. Let's go back and tell all of the stories. Let's go back and tell why the killers are angry, why they became evil. Let's talk about how their father didn't hug them enough and they had to become the killer that they are today. So when I heard that that's exactly what this is going to be, let's go back and find out how Leatherface became Leatherface, I was like, I already could tell this is not going to be for me. Well, we're all entitled to one surprise once in a while, people, because I actually enjoyed Leatherface. Believe it or not, it was pretty damn good.
You take one of mine, and I'll take all yours, Verna. All of them.
So starting with the positives of Leatherface, I think a lot of the direction, a lot of the camera work, the cinematography, there's a lot of callbacks visually to that original film and the remake to a degree as well. You're going to recognize shots like the obligatory shot of a chick walking up to the house and you get the bare end shot of her ass whenever she's walking. It's in all of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies at some point. You get a lot of cinematography like natural light shining through the dark woods whenever somebody's getting chased by a guy with a chainsaw. A lot of things that you're going to look at and automatically just looking at it, you're thinking Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I appreciate little visual callbacks like that. It's not outright copying the style of the original movie or the remake. It's just kind of fitting in that tone and fitting in that universe visually. As far as the story and the way that this movie kind of unveils its plot, I feel like it's a really refreshing installment in this franchise because basically every single Texas Chainsaw movie starts with couple A breaks down and comes under the Sawyer's territory and gets their ass slaughtered until one person's alive at the end, for the most part. That's basically the plot of almost every single one of these movies. I made a joke about it in my last review. Well, this one is the one movie in this franchise to me that does not have that plot at all. It's a road movie where you're following psychopaths just leaving a bloody trail behind them, and it's a mystery trying to figure out which one of these characters is going to end up being the big bad in the end. So it's a very interesting take on this universe and a really refreshing plot in my eyes. Another big positive, if you were a fan of gore, there is gore galore in Leatherface. Basically from the beginning of the movie until the end, you are seeing blood and guts splattered everywhere. You're following a road trip with some deranged killers, so basically every time they stop somewhere, every person that they come across, 9 times out of 10, that person's getting their guts opened up. Another positive which surprised me being this movie was so low budget was that I feel like a lot of the acting in this was very serviceable. There's nobody who I'm going to say was outstanding or great. There's definitely some good acting throughout this, and there's nobody, luckily, that is horrible to the point where you see them and you just want them off the screen, dead or not, because they are so taking you out of the movie with how bad of an actor they are, which you see in a lot of low-budget movies and movies with production problems like this. Luckily, Leatherface is the exception. Everybody does pretty good. Something that really surprised me about this movie, which most prequels completely fuck up in my mind because they try to do it way too thick, too heavy-handed, and not subtle at all, is this movie does really well at being very subtle at showing kind of the origins of other characters in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise that aren't Leatherface. I mean, we're here to get the story of Leatherface, but you also see characters like the hitchhiker when he was young. You see characters like the cook, and it's not in your face. It's not shoved in your face like, look guys, it's the hitchhiker. And another film in this franchise, which I'm going to be talking about very soon, does really bad with stuff like that, of just shoving all these lead-ins and these callbacks in front of your face like you're too stupid to figure it out for yourself. And this movie actually gives some credit to the audience. It gives credit to where they know if you're a hardcore Texas Chainsaw fan, you're immediately going to pick up on these subtle clues and figure out who everybody is without a subtitle coming up saying Grandpa, Cook, Hitchhiker. But if you're not a Texas Chainsaw fan, you're not left out in the dark whatsoever, because the names of these people and the identities of these people does not play into the plot at all. It's almost like an Easter egg. And I thought that was really cool, really refreshing, and really surprising for me at how subtle and successful they were at doing that. And my last positive, which was kind of the biggest relief for me watching this movie, was that they really do creative things with showing the origin of Leatherface. A lot of times whenever you see origin stories for characters like that, they explain too much, they ruin the mystery of the character, they ruin what makes the character scary, and somehow they manage to do a creative, engaging story surrounding the identity of who's going to be Leatherface without explaining too much and without getting rid of what makes that character scary at all. And I was surprised by that, because that's one of the biggest errors of movies like Rob Zombie's Halloween's a perfect example. They get rid of everything that made the original Halloween and the original Michael Myers scary. But you could watch this movie and you could watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre right after it, and you're not going to feel like, damn, if I wouldn't have known his origin story, this would have been a really effective character. It's not that way at all. Now, with that being said, sliding into my negatives, I do think that the identity of Leatherface is pathetically obvious when you watch this movie. You watch this knowing that they want it to be a mystery and a surprise by the end whenever they finally unveil who is going to be Leatherface in the end. When you walk in knowing that, you could pick out who's going to be Leatherface like that. Otherwise, I guess you've never seen a movie before in your entire life, because to me, it was glaringly apparent. Without spoiling the movie, let me just set the stage for you for the characters you're going to be following in this. You have two characters, one female and one male, who are beyond psychotic and murder everything in their path. Then you have a very heavy-set, mentally challenged, and almost mute character who has a lot of the mannerisms of Leatherface. And then you have another character who is the very sympathetic, heroic kind of person that you're going to be rooting for in this movie. And you want him to survive and you want him to get through everything. Now, who out of those four, if they're trying to surprise you, do you think is honestly going to be Leatherface in the end? Tell me in the comment section below. So while I did enjoy the creativity in bringing the origin of Leatherface, to me, just that the mystery element was very unsuccessful, because I was watching it and I was going, okay, this is either going to be a gigantic pull the rug out from underneath me, huge shock at the end of this, or it's going to be blatantly fucking obvious and that person is Leatherface. Oh, okay, yeah, that person's Leatherface. And without trying to spoil too much, another small negative that I had with the reveal of Leatherface was I feel like it was so rushed in the end whenever that started to kind of unveil itself. There was like 3 minutes between that person starting to become Leatherface and that person becoming full-blown Leatherface. And it just felt like there's some journey there that we didn't get to go through because it went from A to Z in about 3 minutes. Another thing that kind of bugged me in this movie too was the fact that there's really nobody to root for in this movie completely, because you either have people who are just flat out evil, psychotic, or you have people that are extremely unlikable, or you have people that are so fucking stupid that you just want them to die because every decision that they make is pissing you off. And that makes for kind of a torn experience when you're going through a story and you don't have anybody that you honestly are like, that person needs to live, that person needs to die, that person needs to go to hell. Basically all of them, you're like, dude, you can all go to hell because you all suck. And while when you're kind of exploring the origins of a psychotic killer and a cannibalistic family, you are going to have a lot of unlikable people in the villain sense, there are some characters in here that I feel like should have been likable enough to kind of break up the monotony, but no, pretty much everybody in this, they're not good people. Which brings me to my last negative, which is kind of focusing on one character in particular. Although all the acting in this movie is pretty good and serviceable, and this is a very small criticism because I like this actor and I think he's a very good actor, to me, Stephen Dorff doesn't really deliver in his role. In the very beginning, he finds out his daughter's killed, the dude is wiped of emotion within about 30 seconds, and he never really pulls off the believability that this guy just lost his daughter in a very bloody and gory way. And leading all the way up to the end of the movie, he's just not a character that you ever sympathize with, ever get behind, or ever really believe in his journey or his motive to get back at this Sawyer family. He just feels like kind of a throwaway character who's thrown in there to be some kind of a weird copy of Dennis Hopper's character in Texas Chainsaw 2, which is wildly better than what Stephen Dorff's character was. Now that I think about it, there is one other thing that kind of bugged me a little bit. This movie is supposed to be a period piece. It's supposed to take you all the way back, years preceding the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was in the 70s. So this is supposed to take place in the 50s at one point, and then the 60s at another point. And I never got the vibe that this was going on in anything other than present day. It does not have any visual cues or style to it that tells me it's in the 50s and the 60s or even the 70s to a degree. It feels like a modern day movie. It feels like they shot this and followed people around in 2017. So that's one aspect of their style that I feel like they really slipped on, which could have really added to this movie if they had nailed it. It does not feel like a period piece at all, which makes it a little bit awkward if you watch this and honestly try to buy into the fact that this is a preceding companion piece to that original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But with all that being said, guys, I'm gonna recommend that you see this, especially if you're a fan of Texas Chainsaw, especially the first movie, because there's a ton of things that ton of Easter eggs that you're just going to eat up all day long if you're a fan of this franchise. And honestly, I'm just so surprised that a movie like this feels like it's actually a decent companion piece to the first movie. I feel like you could watch this and it actually will add a little bit to your experience of that original movie versus most prequels and most movies that try to go all the way back to the beginning that actually ends up taking away from that experience. So if you're a fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise and you have wondered what made Leatherface become Leatherface, this is a pretty good tale to go on to find the answer to that question. It's a good time for horror fans, and it's a good time for Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans with a lot of great Easter eggs and a lot of cool preceding storyline that leads into that original classic movie. So if you're a fan, definitely check it out on Netflix. So what did you guys think of Leatherface? Were you as surprised as me that this movie actually turned out to be pretty damn enjoyable? Did you like the storyline leading up to the birth of Leatherface? Or do you just feel like this is another example of a storyline that should have been left to mystery and they should stop doing these kinds of movies? Put all of your thoughts on Leatherface down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out some of my social media links, I got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter down below, and the link to my Patreon page, which is a great way to support this channel and get a lot of cool exclusive content for patron eyes only. So check all that out, guys, and if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.